and just kind of whatever you all want it to be and getting out of this experience. Also, as a note, I don't know if you just received a notification on your screen or not. I don't know if it tells you. I did start recording this session. There's no pressure around it. It's really just in case I start getting emails back, hey, I wasn't able to attend, but would really love to get some of the information, just so that way we have a resource that we can send back out if somebody can't make any of the 3 meetings that we set up. But yes, please speak up, ask questions. It's entirely meant to be interactive, really just trying to give you information that you may be interested in or want or need. At the same time, I understand that not everybody feels comfortable speaking up. If you don't feel comfortable doing so, that's 100% fine, but we still want to hear your questions. If you use your chat, I would encourage you to either add it to the full chat, or if you don't mind messaging either Xianzhu or Thomas Franco, they are on the team that's working on LASER, and they will bring it up, voice it, so that way I can hear it. I'm just afraid I can't monitor the chat, the presentation, and the participants all at the same time. So just going to ask them to kind of help me out on that front if they don't mind. And, you know, I'll do my best to monitor the chat, but no promises. Okay, so with that, everybody's here to learn a little bit more about LASER. And so, like I said, this is really informal, just trying to give you some information, hear your questions, provide you as much feedback and direction as I can at this point, but also recognize that we're not going to be able to cover everything in an hour, and that's entirely okay. And if it takes us 30 minutes and we've answered all our questions, great. I'm not going to ask you to stick around here for an hour. If we use the full hour, that's also completely fine. And you're welcome to shoot me any emails or questions that you have that you think of down the line. Please, again, don't hesitate to reach out. We are here as a resource for you. So the general way I'm planning on handling this is I'm going to give just a quick overview. What is LASER? What are we planning on? What are we thinking? And then open it up for questions. I'm sure that you have lots of questions spanning a wide variety of things, and I'm happy, like I said, to discuss as much of that and touch on whatever aspects you do have questions about. And then once we kind of get some of those initial questions out of the way, not to say I'm trying to speed through those, but once we've kind of addressed some of those initial thoughts and concerns that people have and want to bring into the space, I'll bring up my Tableau, and we'll actually take a look at a few of the different reports really quickly, not trying to have a full length demo discussion of like, here's every single feature you're going to have. That's not what this is going to be, but it will give you an orienting idea of this is the direction we're going, and here are some of the things that you see. And so that's roughly speaking how I plan on spending, you know, the next 50 or so minutes with all of you. But at the same time, if there's something one of you or any of you really want or need to see, please just speak up, vocalize it. Happy to kind of adjust on the fly, however makes sense for the group. So with that, just quick introductions. My name is Paul Corbett. I'm at the Virginia Department of Education. I am the Director of Technology and Decision Analytics. And so one of the big charges of my team is helping to support and stand up LASER. And I mentioned 2 other of my team members earlier, Xianzhu, who is our decision analytics researcher. And then we also have Thomas Franco on the team, who is a fellow with us for a year, as he is kind of in the middle of a program at Harvard, and he's working with us for the year. And this is one of the projects that he's been working with. He's also done some different research briefs. If you saw like equitable grading practices, when that was released, that was, he worked on that as well. So with that in mind, what is LASER? So LASER is an acronym. It stands for, holy cow, Learning Analytics to Support Education and Reporting. And it is going to be what we're dubbing a decision analytics platform. And the reason we're calling it decision analytics rather than data analytics is we aren't just trying to vomit data back at you. We're hoping to provide you with tools and visualization and resources that are going to enable you to make better decisions to serve your students, to serve your schools, to serve your division. To start with, we are targeting 2 main components, and That will mature over time as we get feedback what are in each of these components, as well as if additional components are built out and rolled into the system as well. And so the two initial places that we are targeting are an early warning system and an accreditation tracker. And so if you've been paying attention to your superintendent's emails, you may have seen a communication that stated the DOE support for the Performance Matters, the PowerSchool Performance Matters solution is going away at the end of this school year. The idea is that there have been a lot of challenges with that platform, not for every division, but broad stroking across the state. There have been a lot of challenges with that platform. And it's fairly expensive as well. Our goal is to build LASER in such a way that it is not just as good as or a replacement of Performance Matters, but it's that and more. And so one of the key components of that is the early warning system, or the baseball scorecard, I believe is what that module is also dubbed in in PowerSchool. We're building out an early warning system. And so have some screenshots, happy to give you an idea of the direction we're going with that. But we are roughly structuring that after an ABC model. And so that's attendance, behavior, and coursework. And so those are the three core components that we will be looking at students' performance on to try to identify students that are on track, getting on the borderline, or need intervention. And one of the things that we are going to try to stress, especially on the coursework side of things, are those students who need intervention, not only in a corrective capacity, but also identifying those students that are really exceeding expectations and saying, these students may need extra challenges presented to them if you have the ability and means to do so as a division or as a school or as a teacher to really continue to keep them engaged and help them achieve their highest potential. So we're trying to structure it such that we can kind of touch on both of those sides of things. All right, so that's kind of the EWS side. Again, trying to stay super high level right now, but more than happy to get into the details with that as you have questions. The other side of the thing, other side of the house that we're starting with is an accreditation tracker. And so that, I think, is a little bit more self-explanatory and something that, while I'm relatively new to the agency, I've been told has been a long-standing request of divisions that having better tools to understand how they are currently tracking and performing on key accreditation metrics is going, and kind of how that's their 1-year score, their 3-year score, how are all those things coming together. And so we're going to try to build out tools and dashboards that will convey a lot of that information to you. A lot of that's going to be based off of your SRC data that you're passing into the agency, but some of that's also going to be based on relatively day-to-day updated information when it comes to your SOL scores and things like that, where we're going to try to build in modules and reports there that will pull in every single day your latest and greatest SOL scores and show you, hey, these are the students that didn't test, but were expected to. These are the students that did not pass their SOLs in these categories, and these are the subscores that they struggled the most with, and help you really have tools, again, at your disposal that will hopefully save you time and help with earlier identification and remediation plans. That was a lot. And again, I'm more than happy to go into any or both of those in a lot more detail, but want to pause there at least for a minute. Oh, sorry. I actually just thought of one more thing that I wanted to state as a primer, and then I'll pause for questions and feedback. So this journey is not a short journey. We've been working on it for a while at the agency, and the actual development and kind of what I'm going to be showing you later and sharing with you is coming out of a fair amount of collaboration with Orange County. They have volunteered to be our partners in the pilot program of this. And so Jim Urasitz, I know he is on this call somewhere. I saw him when he was logging in and joining. So I, cannot thank him and Orange County enough for all of the help and time that they've spent really trying to get this product started. And we still have a long ways to go, and Jim can attest to that. But, we would not be anywhere as close to where we are on the track that we think is a really positive direction without their help. In addition to that, we've recently pulled together a regional steering committee. And so I've seen a few of the members from that on this call as well. And so the idea is, yes, we're partnering every single day very closely with Orange and building a solution that is, in a large way driven by their team's thoughts, in addition to DOE's thoughts. But we also want to make sure it's a good solution for everybody across the state that wants this. And so that's why we have this regional steering committee. So that way, Lisa, I see she's on the call, like she can weigh in and say like, hey, this is great. Love the direction where you're going, but I think this thing might be more of an Orange thing, and we need to generalize this concept so that way it can fit everybody. Or maybe Orange isn't doing something that other school divisions are in their region. And so really trying to get more perspectives, again, so that way we're delivering the best product that we possibly can as quickly as we can. But at the same time, we know even once we launch this thing, it's not going to be perfect. And so it's going to continue to be a journey of onboarding divisions, and that's going to take time. And it's going to be a journey of enhancements. What we put out day one is not what this thing's going to look like 6 months from now, let alone 3 years from now. We're going to continue to ideate, build out new materials based on your feedback. And some of those things might be user interface usability fixes. And some of those things might be entirely new modules with advanced analytics and predictive capabilities built in, if that's what we're hearing from you is important for you to be seeing. Okay, that I actually think does cover kind of what I wanted to lay out as a primer for LASER. And so I'm going to pause for, I'm going to say at least 4 minutes. I'll take us to at least 4:20 to answer any questions and or leave a little bit of uncomfortable silence to see if I can generate some questions. But at the same time, if we have questions and that takes us to 4:45, that's completely fine as well. And I can follow up after we have a few of these sessions with some screenshots that we can just share out to you of like, hey, here's the general direction where we're going on things, just to get you an idea of where we're headed and make sure you're excited. All right, any questions?
Hi, this is Fania Morton. I'm in King George County, and I just wondered, it's Region 3, and I just wondered if you could clarify for me, just trying to get the big picture. This does not replace our student information system, correct?
That is a great question. No, this does not replace your current SIS or LMS, any of those things. It is not mandatory that you use this. We, in fact, expect that there are going to be divisions, especially some of the larger ones that either have an analytics team or have already said, you know what, we are all in with performance matters. I don't care that DOE is not supporting it anymore. We're doing it. That's 100% fine. We have zero qualms with that. We are trying to provide you with a free early warning system and analytics tool that is the best that it can possibly be. But if you have different solutions, totally fine. You want to make different choices? Absolutely fine. We are not mandating anything, but it is not a SIS or LMS replacement. This is only intended to quote unquote replace, but again, it's replace and enhance upon the performance matters component of the PowerSchool suite. And I know there are all sorts of other tools in there like the assessment generator. This isn't taking away that. This isn't affecting that in any way, shape, or form, but that's a great question.
And so that, I'm sorry, just one follow-up quick question. If we are going to maintain PowerSchool as our SIS, does it play nice with LASER?
Great question. So PowerSchool, lucky enough for you and many others on this call, that's what Orange County uses, and they're our guinea pigs. So PowerSchool is the first system that it will play nicely with. We are using an API, or we will be using an API to pull data from there to populate LASER and get all the data in there. That being said, we are starting conversations with all of the other SIS vendors across the state. So whether it's Schoology, Canvas, Synergy, like we are starting those conversations. And so while PowerSchool is the first in line, so to speak, it's the one we've been working with so far, all of the others are going to be built into the system as well over time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I heard somebody else speaking up as well.
Oh, this is Lisa. I was actually going to ask you to clarify that in regards to the integration with SSIS. And so you did a great job just answering that question already.
Fantastic. Thank you. In the chat, I see Jay Cook asked, oh, and Jen may have just answered it as well in the chat, but I'll go ahead and read it out loud. Will districts be able to customize their own instance, or will all work be done by VDOE? Again, great question, and kind of see Xian's response there. Out of the gate, it's going to be fully set forth by DOE, but that's not our long-term goal. And by long-term, I'm not even talking that far. It's actually one of the things that's been identified as our first wave of enhancements is we want to be able to set forth some kind of default benchmarks for different metrics and cut points, but we also want to say, hey, here's what research says, here's what we're setting as the baseline expectations. But if you want to go in and change where you want your early warning for attendance or your needs intervention for mathematics to be, by all means, go do it. You know your division best. And so we're going to build out a configuration page where you can change where some of those cut points are, where some other features are and how they interact. Yeah, that is definitely the direction that we are headed. And so depending on when you're able to get into the system, you might get a slightly different first experience, but the end goal is there. All right, see people using the chat, really love it. So then from Weilenman, I'm sure I'm butchering your last name and I apologize. What is your timeline? How far are you along in the process? Again, great question. So unfortunately, we are a little behind schedule. It's taking us a long time to get our back-end data system cloud infrastructure stood up, not really by any fault of our own or anything like that, but delays happen and it has put us a little bit behind schedule. And so we were hoping to go live with the EWS with Orange County in kind of the end of March, early April. We're off track of that. It still should be before this current school year ends though, that Orange County is up and running. Additionally, we're targeting having about 10 divisions up and running by the beginning of the upcoming school year. And then by the end of the school year, upcoming school year, having about 50 divisions on. And then by the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year, having any division who is interested in being in LASER in it. And when I say being in LASER, that's actually a little bit nuanced and I didn't get into it in my initial overview. By that, I mean linking your SIS. And so linking your SIS or your data systems, that's going to get you access to the early warning system and to what we're dubbing right now, at least, a premium version of the accreditation tracker. There's also going to be a basic version of the accreditation tracker that's made available to all divisions beginning in next spring, whether or not your SIS is integrated yet. And the reason for that differentiation is the basic accreditation tracker will be based largely off of data that DOE already has access to. So that's things like your SRC, that's things like your SOL tests, your access for EL tests, those things that are just already coming into DOE through other avenues. And so it's good dashboarding. We have a lot of great ideas. Xian's been doing a lot of ideation and whiteboarding on that of ways to visualize that and make that data extremely helpful. But at the same time, we're a little bit limited in terms of the predictive analytics or anything like that we can do with such discrete data. And so the premium accreditation tracker will become available to those divisions that link their SIS, and they'll get access to the premium accreditation tracker as well as the EWS system. And that's where you're going to get some of those more enhanced analytic capabilities or comparison tools or what if analysis down the line and things like that. And that has that longer rollout period that will take, we're hoping, no more than about 1.5 years from now to get everybody who's interested up and running. All right. Next up is from S. Shastri in LCPS. If the school division chooses not to use this tool, will there be new data needs that all divisions have to fulfill? What if the division chooses to use this tool, what new data needs will there be? So I kind of touched on this, but just to make sure I kind of fully close that out and address your question, hopefully, fully. Our goal is that there will be no new data needs. There may be data changes that you choose to take on your end for one reason or another, but our goal is to not dictate anything. Our goal is to meet you where you are, other than needing you to work with your SIS vendor and us to hook up your SIS to the API and make sure that your data is pumping through. And then once that happens, we're hoping that our intent is to have the tool, again, meet you where you are, not make you come to where the tool is. There might be reasons why you want to change the way you're doing things, but we're not going to dictate anything that is needed that way. And similarly, if you don't choose to use LASER, that's totally fine. You are welcome not to do that. And your SRC or any of those sorts of things, there is no intention, certainly not currently, it's not even being discussed as a future thing, that is going to be required, that it be done through LASER or anything like that. And again, not saying it will be a decision point or discussion point down the line, but if anybody even starts thinking in that direction, I would fully expect, well, A, I don't think I would be the one leading that. That would be the data services team, but they would be engaging with all of you and making sure that that's what you want to do, and like, how are we going to handle that transition or things like that. So yeah, data need change expectation for all of you is 0. All right. And again, if I don't answer anything things fully, please speak up, just like either in chat or vocally, like just ask more questions. All right. Lisa asked, where will LASER be housed? VDOE website, SSWS? Great question. There's sensitive data here. Like, I think we can all agree about that. You're going to have student level information in here about their performance. And so we're taking that very, very seriously. And so this is going to be housed in a private AWS cloud with all of these SEC 501, 508, and 525 requirements by VITA around it. Like this, the intention is to make this data as absolutely bulletproof as possible. And then in terms of where and how you are going to be accessing it, similarly, we want it to be very restricted, I think is a good word. Not hard to access, but restricted to access it. And so you're going to access it through SSWS because that has multi-factor authentication in it. It has additional password security in it where it changes and it refreshes and things like that. And so you are going to access this application through SSWS. And we'll be working with all of the divisional SSWS administrators as part of that onboarding process to do kind of an initial batch load of who needs to now be granted access to SSWS, as well as training and eventually providing support for anything like password resets and things like that. Our team at DOE is going to grow and expand so that way we can kind of figure out together what are those additional supports that divisions need when it comes to LASER, so that way your time doesn't become 30 minutes a week of resetting passwords. No, we're not going to land in a spot that's like that. If that starts being a thing where password resets are a common thing, that will become a DOE role. But some of those things, it is going to be a little bit of a growing process in figuring out what are those initial needs and where does it make sense to leave the roles and responsibilities within the divisions, and where does it make sense to more centralize that at DOE? Because we do know that divisional control and responsibility is a big thing for all of you, and we don't want to dictate anything to you that isn't really needed to be a decision that we're making, but at the same time, we don't want to impact you adversely. And so we want to make sure we're providing the support that's necessary for you to leverage this tool effectively and well within your division. All right, so Jean said, we have a lot of time in performance matters and it's working for us. It's hard to decide if we can't dig in to see it. And I assume you're talking about digging into LASER to see it. Makes sense. Absolutely does. We'll get to some of that today where we'll start to show you some things where we're going. But at the same time, The eventual goal is once we have the system up and running, we could have a test or playground environment with completely fake data, fake students, fake schools, no real information in there. But Gene, we could grant you access to it. So that way you could come in, play around with it, try some of the filtering, look at the different reports, and make an educated decision of, is this the right tool for us? Do we want to make this switch? Or not, we're good with performance matters. It's what's working for us. And so we can't offer that right now because we're not fully up and running, but that's entirely the intention, is to have that playground space where you will be able to better make that assessment. And I hope that hits, again, at what you're trying to get to, but if it doesn't and I missed the point, please just let me know. Don't want to assume, but is this service free for districts to sync their SIS? Is there a specific SIS that's compatible to LASER? That's from Valenta. So touched on this a little bit earlier. So specific SIS that's compatible to LASER right now, that's PowerSchool, but it's not going to be limited to that. We're going to connect to every SIS, regardless of where you are, if you say, I want to use LASER. And so that may mean if you are the one school division that's using a particular SIS, or you're the only one out of 10 school divisions are all using Schoology, but you're the only one who says you want to use LASER, your onboarding time may be a little extended as we figure out and work with that vendor and get everything ironed out, but we'll get you we'll get you onto the system. And in terms of cost, no, we are working to update our guidance and requirements from a state expectation level for the SISs, that they would all become contractually obligated to provide this integration via API to meet the accreditation reporting standards that are being set forth by DOE. And so in the short term, if there are any costs, DOE are stomaching those, but the long-term vision is that those costs will be zero for divisions no matter what. All right, how will VDOE decide which divisions have access to LASER? That's from Fanya. It's a great question. So one of the things we told you, we're working with Orange. They're going to be the first on. We also have a regional steering committee. I mentioned them as well. They're going to be offered the next slots in line because, again, they're working with us. They're spending additional time with us to make sure that we're going in a good and right direction. And we're valuing their time and trying to offer them kind of a resource in appreciation of their time and investment in this. Beyond that, because we are furthest along with PowerSchool, we are going to start with them and divisions that are using PowerSchool. But our goal, again, is to get as many divisions on as quickly as possible, regardless of SIS. And we're starting those conversations with other SIS vendors. And so there isn't yet a hard and fast list or order in terms of how divisions are going to be brought on board. And that is work that my team and I will be doing in the next month or so, is following up with this group and kind of everybody that was on this distribution list to say, hey, is this something you're interested in? Yes, right now we know we want it, or as somebody alluded to earlier, like maybe we'd like to do a little bit more testing and discovery before we make that decision. And then some divisions may say like, nope, appreciated the information, but we know enough to know it's not for us, or at least not right now. And so we'll be trying to gather that information as well as what SIS you're on. So that way we can kind of build out that onboarding schedule. But right now, I don't have any solid information for you on that. All right, Jay Cook, can data outside of the SIS be included, like social, emotional from another database? Excellent question. And that's, again, something that we have been talking about. And the core answer is yes. That is absolutely something we've already been talking about and something we heard back from our one meeting that we've had so far with some of the regional steering committee, but we're going to be digging into it more, is that socio-emotional data is a really important thing that we be ready to build into the system. And so that's on that future enhancements list. And so that will not be something that's ready to go right out of the gate, but it is 100% in scope. And we already have procured software packages that are going to allow us and facilitate the transfer of those data that are not in the SIS, but that we want into the system, into the LASER system. And so absolutely that is in our roadmap to kind of the future of this product. School systems be able to use both Performance Matters and LASER from Dwayne. Yeah, there's no reason you couldn't choose to do that. And in all honesty, that might be something that some divisions do anyway, because they may say, well, we don't want to be without an EWS, and LASER is where we want to go. But based on where we think we're going to be onboarded, that's not until January of 2022. So what do we do for that fall semester? Yeah, maybe you would say, you know what, we're going to use Performance Matters and LASER at the same time, figure out what we like about one or the other, and then make a decision over the upcoming summer what direction we actually want to go. And so, yeah, there's nothing that would prevent you contractually or anything like that from doing both for, you know, as short or as long as you wanted to do. Is LASER the VDOE acronym or the name of the software package? It's the acronym. So it stands for Learning Analytics to Support Education and Reporting. That's Dr. Lane's brainchild. He came up with it. I gave him like 14 or something different ideas. And so he chose the 15th one that wasn't on my list, but it worked really well. We're excited about it, thought it fit. It isn't anything to do with the software package. Oh, what's the name of the software package? So it's a little bit of some things. At its core and kind of what you're going to be most recognizably interacting with is Tableau. And so obviously there's like a back-end data component. There are going to be some other like front-end web application wrappers that are containing that, but like the heart and soul of it is going to be Tableau based. And that's, if you're familiar with that software package, that is what you would recognize or feel like you are interacting with. All right, so again, please don't take this as a sign that you shouldn't continue to ask questions, but I'm going to start pulling up my dashboards. Jay, I saw your next question. And no, there is not a public side to the dashboards. This is all internal data. That's the public side of things is something that has been kicked around. I would say right now, that is not even on our long-term vision. I don't feel great about going down that path. There are a lot of challenges with it from a security and data privacy perspective that I don't really want to delve into in its full depth right now. What I would say is that decision could be changed though, like my mind could be changed as we hear feedback from all of you. I would be more interested in exploring the platform generating reports, whether it be like PDFs or things like that, which could be generated for a school, for a teacher, for a student, for an administrator, something of that nature, which then they can download from the system and choose how to disseminate that, whether that is post that on your divisional website or that is take it to a parent-teacher conference or something like that. That's more the direction that I'm interested in going rather than making the application public-facing just because there are a lot of extra concerns around going in that direction. So David asked, will we be able to add additional grouping inside LASER? For instance, tagging students by in-person versus virtual this year, or students who are in a specific program at a school that isn't its own VDOE school code? That's a great question. And I will say the second half of that is not something we've actually discussed, but is definitely an interesting idea. And if it's something that we're hearing, if it's just from your division, it's going to be lower down on the priority list. But if it's something we're hearing from several different divisions, it'll go up on the priority list for that future enhancement types of stuff. So definitely we'll want to be hearing those types of components of feedback as we go on in terms of like kind of curating our backlog of what we're going to build out. For the first half of that question, the in-person versus virtual, that is 100% something we've been talking a lot about this year. And at least for the time being, the decision was made to say, you know what, we don't know what the future holds. Let's not over-engineer for the in-person versus virtual versus hybrid Schedule A versus hybrid Schedule B. Like, there are lots of different ways that looks all across the Commonwealth. And so we didn't want to start trying to over-engineer that until we had a little bit more data. And by data, I mean just time to understand what does that future learning environment look like and what are the different ways we need to be able to split those student groups when it comes to learning modality. So that is a discussion we're having, but don't have a clear path forward yet. We're already using Tableau. Is it possible for us to sync our server with LASER? That's a really great question. I would be curious to have a conversation offline of this just to understand a little bit more about what you're thinking, Valenta. It's a really interesting direction to take a conversation. So I am going to table that, but please don't make you think that I'm not excited about exploring that. I absolutely am. And Xian or Thomas, if you don't mind making a note, let's reach out to Valenta and try to get a little bit more information there about what they're thinking. All right. So on to my screen share. So this is kind of what we are, and trust me, this is a little rough. We understand that. It's going to, again, it's a starting point. We're building out enhancements. It's going to look nicer. It's going to get better. Things are going to be added. But this is intended to give you a directionality of where we are currently and where we are headed. And so right now we're on the summary page. So you're going to have different filters that will allow you to split the way you are looking at your data. And right now I've actually pulled up the administrator level view. And so all of the reports that we're looking at will be, the data will be tailored to whomever is already looking at it. And so if you're a divisional level person, by default, you're going to see the data for all of the schools, all of the students in your division. If you're a principal, it'll be limited to your school. If you're a teacher, it'll be limited to the students who you actually teach. Those are enhancements to change those user groups and things like that, that again, we're working on those down the line. Some of those are actually already being figured out and configured right now, but that is the direction we're going.
Wear wearables on their wearables, and now there's
somebody has something going. Okay, there we go. And sorry, that made me lose my train of thought. Right, so the data you're looking at. You will also be able to kind of change those views or what students you're looking at by using these filters. So you'll be able to kind of limit it by their current EWS metric on specific components, or limit it to your students with disabilities if you're really interested in drilling down into that student group. Or you could say, you know what, I want to look at my fourth graders who are being served by these 3 teachers and who are female. Like, if you, for some reason, want that specific slice of data, you'll have the filters at your disposal to change all of your reports to be able to look at and drill into the specific student groups. Again, we have our ABC model here, attendance behavior coursework, and you'll see the count of students and the percentage breakout of how that works out. Again, all the data we're looking at right now, completely fictionalized, made up, does not tie back to anything. So all these student names down here, not real students. The only thing that is real as we will go through these is if you see school names, they are actually school names of schools in Orange County. But beyond that, all the data tied to those schools, fictional. So we're not breaking any PII things right now. It's all fake data. And then we're going to have a component down here that really flags your highest risk students by their overall kind of EWS designation, the breakout of their EWS by component area, and then we're going to have the ability to see whether or not there are improvement plans in place for these students. This currently, we've already had discussions internally about this. This isn't laid out quite the right way. You don't have one improvement plan that targets everything. So this is already an area that we're currently ideating on. It's going to look differently the next time or whenever you see this. But that's something that we're working on building out, is the ability to monitor and track improvement plans by different areas, and coursework is actually going to be broken out by specific coursework areas. So that way, again, you'll be able to drill into that. We're looking at relatively static dashboards right now, but all of this is going to have drill down capabilities. And so if I were to click on the 6 right here for early warning students for behavior, it would actually take me over to a student details dashboard that's already pre-filtered to focus on those 6 students. And so everything is going to have drill down capabilities when you click on it. Sorry, showed you that, jumped ahead a little bit. Don't need to spend too much time looking at that yet. All right, so then we're going to have more specific dashboards for each of the areas. And so this one is attendance that we're looking at right now. So again, you're going to have kind of your key performance indicators, your KPIs at the top, your filters, and then we're going to have some longitudinal data. So that way you can track how are your students or your student body changing their EWS status over time. And so you may start to learn, like, you know what, for whatever reason, January and February, that tends to be a rough time for us when it comes to attendance, but cumulatively, we end up doing really well by the end of the year. And so it's fine, but we should look into what it is about January and February, or it might be for specific teachers, January and February are weird months. And so trying to give you a way to look at things longitudinally. All right, and so then next up is the ability to compare, again, we're looking at a divisional level dashboard right now, different schools against one another, just to give you an idea of how are all of my schools doing. And so you may say like, Locust Grove right here, it has my lowest percentage of students that are on track when it comes to attendance. What's going on there? I'm going to have a discussion with that principal. And again, not showing you everything right now, but a principal's view, it wouldn't be a list of schools. It would be a list of the grades within your school or potentially teachers. And that's one of the decisions we're making right now. So that way you would have the breakout and be able to say like, what's going on with 3rd grade? They have really weird attendance patterns. Let me dig into that with those teachers and try to understand what's going on there. We're going to have a breakout of absences by type. So that way you can track, are they excused, unexcused? Are they based on disciplinary actions, suspensions? And again, further understanding of what are those ISS and OSS days related to suspensions coming from? How many infractions and how many days? Are they major or minor infractions? And really trying to understand what is leading to absences from a disciplinary standpoint. And, you know, that may say like, wow, we are causing a lot of days of in-schools, like a lot of absences due to our ISS and OSS. Is that really the intervention and disciplinary action that we want to be taking this frequently, that we're causing between ISS and OSS nearly 22,000 days of absences across our student body? That's a lot of lost instructional time. And so it's, again, it's just intended to give you ways to raise questions and discover things. And because you have these filters up at the top, you could look into disproportionality among your student groups. Are you treating certain parts of your student body differently than other parts of your student body? And does that mean you're going to want to take action either from an administrative perspective or from a professional development perspective to really explore and try to figure out what's at the heart of that? And then here, absences by period. You know, you may figure out like, okay, first and last day, that's not surprising that those have slightly higher absences, but what's going on with period 7? That's relatively in the middle of the day. Why are absences spiking right then? Is there something we need to do to better structure our day or engage our students differently during that period of the day to make sure that they're staying engaged with their learning? And so again, not trying to say you need to look into anything, but trying to give you the tools to do some self-discovery and ask those questions yourself. And then again, some other tools that will let you kind of look at different ways of splitting out specific students, or you can use the filters above to look at student groups and how do the selected students, here you can see it's 91% for the selected students versus your all student average, which is 90%. And then you can look at month to month, how has that changed? And again, it might raise different questions about different student bodies or student groups and how you want to address attendance problems with them. Chronic absenteeism, similar thing, trying to give you the ability to understand month to month over the course of the year, how is your chronic absenteeism trending? And in this case, what's going on with November? Why is it so much lower than the rest of the year? And right now, the data points are tied a little bit incorrectly to one another. The line is actually supposed to be cumulative to date, and the bars are supposed to be specific months. Again, we're working through some things on our end with the data, but trying to give you an idea of where we're going. But you might be able to compare relative to that dotted line of the accreditation threshold, both how is it varying month to month, and then are you on track to meet that accreditation threshold based on the data you're seeing so far. All right, that's our first dashboard, like really dig in detailed dashboard that we've gone through. And I do recognize that we're down to the final 10 minutes of the presentation or the time we have together today. And so there are dashboards for behavior, coursework, a little analytics tool that we've already pulled together, and student details. If there aren't questions, I'm absolutely happy to show you those. But at the same time, I recognize questions right now may be more helpful than just listening to me talk some more. So I'm going to pause for at least 2 minutes to see if there are more questions that people have about this. So I'm going to go to analytics, and then I'll go backtrack to coursework. I feel like those are both the thing that's probably the most different, and then the thing that probably people are potentially most interested in, just as kind of the last step of kind of what we'll spend our time with. And I do see a question about, can we send PowerPoint or screenshots of the various dashboards so we can review them on your own time? Yes, we'll definitely follow up and send out future communications with some of those screenshots and things like that for you to look into and on your own time, kind of like you said. So next up is what we're calling an analytics page. And so this is a scatter plot of all of your students and kind of how are they doing on coursework, how are they doing on attendance down across the bottom, your x-axis, and then the color of the circle is kind of their behavioral EWS rating. And so it kind of gives you all of the information at once with students as individual dots and kind of laid out against one another. So you can kind of say like, what's going on with these students over here? That's a little weird that we have some people with such low attendance rates, but are still doing fairly well on their coursework. Or what's going on with these students down here that have phenomenal attendance, but yet are really struggling in their coursework. Or, you know, maybe you want to look just at your reading students. And I recognize the data didn't change. The backend data is the same for all the subjects right now. But like you would have the ability to toggle it by coursework and say like, okay, what's going on there? Or, you know, you'd be able to in the future say like, oh, what about just the male students? How are they doing? Okay, let me change it over to just the female students. And so it's going to give you a different way to kind of check and track how students are doing kind of as a whole scatter plot all at once, and then make decisions and look into specific subgroups of students from there. All right, and then the last dashboard that I think we'll have time to look at together today is something about coursework. And so again, a lot of things are going to look and feel fairly similar to what we looked and talked through on the attendance dashboard. So I'm not going to rehash some of those things, but you're going to be also having some SOL data piped into here. And so right now it's a grade breakdown of your SOLs, and you'll be able to see, you know, how many students are advanced, how many students are proficient, and then how many students did not pass their SOL in the most recent test administration cycle. And you'll be able to change it by category. And then again, this is at the divisional level view. As you get into specific teachers, the views are going to look slightly different, and they'll get some of that subcategory reporting information a bit more front and center. Not saying the divisional administrators wouldn't be able to see that, but they probably care more at a glance across the board, how are we doing in reading? Whereas your 7th grade reading teacher, they're going to care more about how are we doing on vocabulary versus inductive reasoning from passages versus, you know, grammar and things like that. And so giving different people different information front and center that may be more pertinent to the questions that they want to answer with their students. And then here, having kind of the student coursework performance. So coursework is going to be a different set of data that are driving the system relative to SOLs. And so both are going to be important and kind of give you your overall student coursework EWS rating, but coursework is going to be that divisional or school administered benchmark tests, summative assessments, and end of term grades that are going to give you the ability to say, like, based on the information that we in Orange County are administering to our students and the data we're getting back based on how they're doing on our tests, this is how we would rate them. And then you're also going to have that SOL data to give you a little bit more of that, for lack of a better term, like objective or third party feel relative to these standards that we are not generating the test material or selecting the test questions, but rather an independent party is doing that. How is that coming together? And so that way you'll be able to kind of track, and we're going to build out tools that'll help you better understand how do your coursework and your SOL results tie together. Is your coursework really easy? And so like your students are getting 80s and 95% on their assessments, but still struggling to pass SOLs? Or is your coursework really hard where, you know, your coursework is at average is at like a 70%, but you have 98% of your students passing your SOLs and 30% of them are advanced in their SOL ratings. And so it's really just trying to tie together, how do your coursework and your SOL numbers tie together? We're going to give you some tools to try to unpack some of that information as well. And then it's not shown here, but there will also be kind of similarly those tools to what you dig into specific student groups and understand how specific student populations are doing relative to the total student body. So that way, if you want to focus in on how are your students with disabilities doing relative to the full student body, or similarly with your English language learners, you can kind of unpack that data as well. All right, so we have about 3 minutes left, maybe a little less than that. So I just saw a question get added. I'm going to address that in just a second, but please, again, just want to say we're really excited about this. We're also really excited to hear from you what you think of it. Are we on the right track? Are we totally off base? Is it a product you're excited about? What is missing? That is that link to say, you know what, that's what we want to go with if it only had this thing. And I know we blew through this. It was really fast. We have tons of other exciting things that we are already planning to build into the system. So some of the things you may say may already be in the pipeline, and it's just going to be further validation that we're on the right track. And some of your things that you raised may be completely new ideas that we had not yet thought of. So do welcome that feedback, and hopefully we're on the right track. Hopefully you're excited, but more to come in the future as well. Okay, so just wondering about the access to the system being through SSWS that is not typically available to teachers. So it seems someone would need to be the LASER data manager in order to provide the data to teachers in a timely manner to develop and proceed on intervention plans. So that's actually really well noted, and it's going to be a change. Teachers are going to be getting access to SSWS now. Their ability of what they're able to do within SSWS is going to be really constrained. It's going to be access laser. But because of the sensitivity of this data, we are needing that multi-factor authentication. And so they are going to have to go through SSWS to access this. But that is, you're right, it is going to be in there. But the idea is teachers are going to have their own dashboards and be able to log in and just, hey, every Monday during my planning period, I'm looking at the most recent data. How have things changed from last week? Did any of the other teachers add any notes about intervention plans for any of my students? Oops, sorry.
But you know what? I'm really.
Yeah, and so are there any other comments from other teachers about an intervention plan that I have set up with Sheehan, and do we want to try something different? We're going to work on building a collaboration space in LASER about those intervention plans. And so, couldn't demo that today. It's not built yet, but it's on our roadmap. And so, yeah, it's going to be a platform that we are not only making available to teachers, but we're looking for that feedback of what is going to make this something that teachers want and are excited to use and is going to be value add for them, and not just, it's another system I need to log into and look at. We're hoping to avoid that. And so either the more data that we can capture here or use here as this kind of a one-stop shop, what ideas you have that you're interested around that, or what we can make this truly value add for teachers, we absolutely want to hear that feedback. And we're doing our best to discover that on our own, but we may be missing things. And let me rephrase that. We're absolutely missing things. We just don't know what we're missing yet. And so that's, all part of that future enhancement stuff that we are going to be doing. How quickly will SOL data be loaded as testing is progress to give schools preliminary accreditation information? For EWS component, will divisions have the ability to add additional data components specific to that division? So first question on that from T. Shinton, or possibly TS Hinton, depending. The SOL data be loaded. Like I said, we are, the goal, the intent, our directive from Dr. Lane has been that during SOL season, we are rerunning and recompiling that data every single day. And so we still have to figure out exactly how that's going to work and how that's going to happen, but that is the end target. That is what we are going for. And so, yeah, you're going to have that preliminary accreditation information as updated to accurate as possible based on the data that we have available to us at the time. And data we have available to us that is, dependent upon whether you're kind of doing the basic, where it's just the data that the DOE has, or if it's the more enhanced version where we are linked to your SIS and can perhaps pull some more recent information for some of those metrics as well. For the second half of the question, for the EWS component, will divisions have the ability to add additional data components specific to that division? That's a great question. And the short-term answer is no. The long-term answer is yeah, probably. And so we are working, and I've mentioned with Orange, we also have a regional steering committee that we're working with that has representatives from all across the state to make sure that we're not over-engineering a solution for Orange, but in fact, we're getting a good solution that's going to work for as many of the divisions across the state out of the box, so to speak. And so we know when this thing launches, we are going to have a backlog of future enhancements that we already know we want to build, but it's also, we want to get something in your hands as quickly as possible. And so it's kind of balancing those two things. And so we know there's going to be enhancements coming on an ongoing basis, pretty much as long as this product is being used, because we want it to be the best product available. And so with that, a lot of what we decide to focus on is going to be driven by what we're hearing, whatever seems to be the highest priority. And so one of the big things, for example, that we've been hearing already is, what about socio-emotional data? And okay, that's not stored in your SIS currently, but we're hearing that from a lot of different divisions that that's going to be an upcoming focus. Then that's probably something we're going to prioritize, figuring out how to get that into the system. And so some of the things that you're saying might be specific to your division. It might be, it very well may be. It might also be something that a lot of other divisions are doing something similarly, possibly in a different way, but a similar idea that they're trying to address. And so that might become higher priority for us to work in. So all that to say, we will work to build out pretty much everything that everybody is looking for. But given that we're working for pretty much the entire state to build those things out, we are going to have to choose where to prioritize our efforts. And so some things may be lower priority from a LASER perspective, even if it's relatively high priority, but it's only high priority for a single division. So kind of a mixed bag there. All right, Mark is asking, will there be an automated way for us to upload our data, not manual uploads, but through a web service or SSIS? Right, so we're intending for this to be fully automated from a data perspective, largely leveraging those APIs that I was talking about earlier. We are already working with PowerSchool. We have plans that we're engaging with Schoology, Synergy, Canvas, and kind of the other key players. All of those already have APIs that are EdFi compliant, and that's kind of the data structure that we're going to be using on the back end. And so we're already going to be able to pull that data in. And then kind of tying back to the earlier question about components that are specific to a division, so maybe your data are stored in a different system or something like that. We also already have procured a solution that is going to be our ETL or our data access solution for those one-off, doesn't fit through the API type of data elements. And so that is something we're already considering, again, to try to lower the burden as much as possible. We aren't going to be looking for this system to be powered by manual uploads unless for some reason that is absolutely necessary. And I honestly can't think of a reason that it would be. All right, Cynthia followed up and said, so the assessment piece will be based on the data, but won't be a tool to deliver create assessments. Is that accurate? That's a very good clarification, and that is accurate. Yes, this system, LASER, the EWS component, is only that early warning system. It's only replacing the baseball scorecard portion of Performance Matters. It is not replacing the assessment generator. That is still something that you are absolutely welcome to use. And in fact, you're absolutely welcome to use the Performance Matters baseball scorecard. It's just that DOE is no longer contractually supplying it for you, but you are absolutely welcome to procure that for your own division with PowerSchool. It's not disappearing from their offerings or anything like that. DOE is just no longer supporting that for you. We are providing you LASER instead of providing the Performance Matters baseball scorecard. And so all of the other components of PowerSchool are still going to be in PowerSchool, the assessment generator, things like that. Now, I'm not promising anything, but if we hear from enough divisions, like we could get absolutely bonkers crazy and that could go on the backlog. I don't even know how we would address that. So I probably really low likelihood that we build in an assessment generator into this platform. That's not what it's intended to be. It is intended to be a decision analytics platform. But at the same time, those types of ideas are important for us to be hearing. So that way we can have those discussions internal to the DOE. But again, just recapping Cynthia's question, the tool to create and deliver assessments, that would still be through your current contracts with your SIS vendor. LASER is not going to have that component. Yeah, and I see Kristen is saying that's how I understood it too. Yeah, and I do know that that is something that it has been a little bit of a point of confusion where some people have interpreted it different ways. And so I'm glad that you asked that so that way we could clarify that. Can data be pushed to assist like SOL scores? That's a really good question, and honestly not something that we've really been exploring quite yet. But it's absolutely something that we can start talking about. We had mostly been thinking of this system as taking your data and then giving you powerful visualization tools to make decisions with. But that being said, once that API is established, there's no reason that data couldn't flow the opposite way from LASER into your SIS. And so, James, that's a really interesting question that we will need to kind of take back and do a little bit of kicking around on our side of things. Will the data pull any SOL strands, deeper data, et cetera, or just scores for tests from Performance Matters? So Mecklenburg County, I'm going to try to answer that. If I miss what you're driving at, again, please speak up, let me know, and I'd be happy to follow up on that. So assuming the SOL strands, deeper data that you're talking about are like those subscores or longitudinal tracking, things like that for a student, yes, we are absolutely intending to pull that data in and have it be part of our system and perhaps visualized in a few different ways where, yeah, you'd be able to see for a student that's been in Mecklenburg County for the last 3 years, you'd be able to see their testing history of SOLs and not just their kind of overall by subject, did they pass, are they advanced, or did they fail? But in fact, you'd be able to dig into the subscores for each of the tests that they took and understand like, oh, they passed English, but their vocabulary isn't really up to snuff where we would like to see it. They actually struggled on that subcomponent a little bit. So yes, that is something we are intending to be in this platform. Will map data be pulled in as well from Bobby Shockley? Yes, so that's a great question. I mentioned that ABC structure earlier, attendance, behavior, coursework. Coursework right now, we are envisioning as being structured in 2 different ways that kind of roll into a total coursework component. And so one of those is going to be your divisional school administered generated type of assessments. And so that's kind of your summative assessments and your end of term grades for your students in each of their subject areas, and that data will pump into the system. The other side of things will be those, I'm going to call them third-party standardized tests. So your MAPs, your PALs, your SOLs, your access for ELs, all of those things are going to be an additional component that are going to help inform how we think that student is performing when it comes to coursework as a whole. And so it is going to pull in both of those factors, and you're going to have both of those sets of data weighing in and visible through the platform. A major benefit of PMAA is the ability to load and view side-by-side class rosters, demographic info, benchmark assessments, WIDA access testing, SWL testing, and other data points. I'm struggling to understand how this will be better than performance matters for making decisions based on data. That's a great question, Jeremy. And while we think we're going in a great direction, there's absolutely the chance that we're going to send out screenshots at some point, or possibly even see demoing today. And you're going to say, like, this isn't for us. Like, it's not going to work for us. That's perfectly fine for you to make that decision. We hope it's not the case. We hope we're hitting the nail on the head and you're going to love it and be really excited about it and find it to be extremely useful. But we also understand this may not be the solution for every division. Some divisions are saying, nope, we are performance matters. We are all in. It is hooked up. It is humming and we love it. And that is perfectly fine. If it's doing what you need to support your students effectively, great. That's what we care about as our end goal, supporting students effectively. We're just trying to provide you another potential tool that might work for you. And so in terms of kind of that question, we are putting in a lot of data. There are going to be visualizations. There are going to be dashboards. There are also going to be kind of that spreadsheet-y table chart of tons of data where you'll be able to filter and say, like, you know what, I really want to look at my white students who are economically disadvantaged in grades 5 through 6 that failed last year's SOL. And I'm curious how they're doing in math so far this year. And like, that's a really weird situation that somebody might want to look into. But if you want to, our intention is to have this platform give you the capability to be able to isolate that data and those students and really dig into that information. Or like you said, add in SOL scores, math coursework scores, English coursework scores, and your WIDA access for EL scores for a certain set of students and have all those be different columns side by side right there. So yes, that's absolutely the same type of stuff that we're looking to do. And then we're hoping to like build from there and do even more. Not all that's necessarily going to be available out of the gate, but that is our vision, is that it's going to be at least as covering the basis of performance matters and then some is really our end target and what we're driving towards. All right, are we saying that school systems will be on their own for the assessment piece, but LASER will pull the data from the SIS, from Jay Murray? Yes, that is what I'm saying. So in terms of generating your assessments, that is something that you would still need to do. But just to make sure we are clear, that product within PowerSchool or within a SIS, that is not currently supported by DOE. And so the fact that we are saying we are no longer supporting performance matters doesn't impact that in any way. We are not supporting the assessment generator. And so the lack of us supporting the baseball scorecard doesn't impact that in any way. So in a large sense, that assessment piece is completely unchanged or untouched by the LASER thing. All we're saying is if you have that data in your SIS, we're going to grab it for you and we're going to visualize it and try to help you understand what it is saying about your students. Benchmark test scores are not scored in PowerSchool. How will that affect everything? So that kind of goes back to the earlier thing where we're going to try to pull as much information from your SIS as we can, but we're also looking at connecting to LMSs. We also have a solution for pulling data from other places other than your SIS. And so we know that some divisions do store that benchmark data in their SIS, but we also know that some do not. And so as it comes time to bring your division on board and integrate you into LASER, we're going to figure out what is the right way to pull the necessary data from your systems as you currently have them to make it interact and comply with LASER and kind of get that data into the system. Who will have access to log into the LASER system? How will what data they can see be decided? That is a fantastic question, Jeremy. So access to this system is going to be done through SSWS. There are a lot of reasons for that. The big one is it's really secure. It has multi-factor authentication. It's going to be a secure way for us to ensure that only the people who should be accessing this data are. And then in terms of once somebody is in there, we are going to be pulling from your SIS, from your divisional data, information that ties teachers and students together, or the fact that you are a teacher and you cover these classes or these grades, or that you're an administrator, or that you're a principal, or that you're a division administrator. And those components of information that we'll be linking as we set your division up within the system will dictate what information every user is able to see when they log in. And so if I'm a teacher and I log in, I'm only able to see the data of the students that I teach. If I'm a divisional leader, I'm going to see data for every school, for every student in my division. And I would have the ability to change and say, you know what, I actually want to pretend that I'm a teacher, so that way I can see the exact same views that my teachers are seeing. And so you'll actually have the ability to kind of change kind of down the access level, how you are approaching the system, to kind of figure out how you want to interact with it to get whatever information out of it that you're looking to get when you're accessing it at that time. So the follow-up question that I wouldn't be surprised has already been added there is like, whoa, SSWS, like not everybody's in there. That's going to take a lot. That's going to be part of that onboarding process. Again, we're going to do a batch upload and generation of everybody who needs access to the system, which again, that's teachers, that's administrator, that's school counselors, that is your divisional level staff that you think needs to be engaged in this data. We're going to do a batch creation of them in SSWS, but then it's going to kind of be up to your divisional SSWS administrators to help maintain that. But while that can seem scary right now, that's also one of the kind of long-term, and not even super long-term, like a 6-month thing that we're keeping in mind in terms of, is that the right model? Or do we need to have dedicated DOE staff that is going to help support things like password resets or access or things like that? And so it is going to be a discovery along the path, but to start with, we're going with that SSWS administrator at the divisional level, because you're going to know better than anyone at DOE who should have what level of access or when somebody is leaving your organization. That will we be able to manually pull the SOL data and upload into PowerSchool, or will we need the Pearson still need Pearson for the longitudinal files? So, oh, okay, I think I understand the question here. So if I'm understanding the question, it's kind of, I mentioned that the SOL data is going to be in the accreditation tracker. And so would you be able to pull it down from the accreditation tracker, upload it into your SIS, and therefore have that pump into the EWS or just be stored in your SIS in general? That's a really good question. That is not something that I would say we've fully thought through yet. And I would be a little hesitant to say, yes, it's going to work seamlessly. It may work. Part of the reason I'm hedging that is it depends upon what information you're hoping to have tied to that record that you would then be uploading into your SIS. I don't know if you've ever looked at like a raw Pearson file. It's really wide. It has tons and tons of columns in there. And so if you're hoping for that full horizontal record, probably not. I doubt we're not going to be storing that much information in LASER that you would then have access to pull down. If you're only looking for some of those key things, what was their performance level? What was their scale score? What was their subgroup scores? That data, yeah, we could have that conversation, and that's very likely something that we could explore. And so I hope that addresses that question. If I missed the mark on that, M. Stratton, let me know, and we can kind of revisit that question. Sorry, when do you anticipate this product being fully developed and up and running for all divisions? Great question about timeline there from Amy. So we're working with Orange right now. We're a little bit behind schedule. We're having some kind of back-end issues getting something procured, but that's, it's not a huge delay. We're still hoping to have Orange up and running before the end of this school year. Our goal is to have 10 divisions up and running going into the upcoming school year, the 21-22 school year. Onboard divisions throughout the school year, having about 50 to 60 onboarded by the end of the 21-22 school year, and then having it available to every division by the beginning of the 22-23 school year who wants to be on board. That is the timeline for the SIS integrated product. And so that's the EWS and kind of the more advanced analytics on the accreditation side. If your division is like, we have our own thing, we're going with the performance matter stuff, we really are just interested in that accreditation tracker. That sounds cool. If that's what you're looking for, that will be available to all divisions. That kind of basic accreditation tracker, that will be available to all school divisions next spring. That's the timeline we're currently operating under. Amy asked about uploading local data into the system. I kind of talked about that earlier in a different question. Depends on what the data is. If it's kind of some of the key core things that we're already looking to visualize within LASER, yes, we have ways to get that data no matter what system it's in. If it's kind of an add-on enhancement type of thing, not part of what we've already yet developed, it would go into our backlog to figure out what is the right way to get it in, visualize it, make it usable for you. But that is our goal. It's just it would be put into the backlog. Offer single sign-on through the SSIS. No, we will not. It will be sign-on through SSWS, which I do not believe is single sign-on compatible. If it is, and I'm just not aware of that, then yes, but it would be the same sign-on process that we have with SSWS currently, because we need that multi-factor authentication component from a security perspective, because the system is going to be housing a lot of PII and like student record information. We want to make sure it's absolutely as secure as possible. And so we aren't going to be integrating sign-on through the SSIS. Sign-on is going to be happening through SSWS. Virginia teacher license number going to be a required part of the student data import in order to link teacher to scores, or will it still be optional? That is not the route we are going. We can't promise it won't be required. In some ways, it's going to depend upon what your data structures are like within your own SIS, but that is not our intent to make that required. We are right now looking at using other primary indices, the main one being email address, because every person who's logging in, which will include all teachers, is going to have an SSWS account. We're going to have their email address. Pretty much all SIS have a teacher record, which would include their email address. And then that would give us the tie-in from their login to SSWS to your SIS. And then the SIS you already should be internally linked, that a teacher is linked to specific students. And so that's kind of the data walk that we are planning on doing, not requiring the Virginia teacher license number. That is not our intent. Okay, got a few questions. I'm sorry if you already covered this, but will you share internal metric cut scores that are used to tier the students? That's a great question from L. Bennett. So out of the gate, we are using kind of research-based cut points, and you will know what they are. Yes, you will absolutely know what they are to kind of split these tiers open. That, however, is one of our first identified enhancements that we're going to build out, is giving you the capability to say, you know what, we actually want our attendance cut threshold for early warning not to be at 95%. We want it to be at 97%. Or behavior, you know what, we want that to be a little bit lower. Coursework, turns out our coursework is really rigorous. And so our students that are getting 70% are still passing their SOLs. So we don't want our early warning cut score at 85. We want it down at 70%. And so we're going to, like I said, it's an enhancement that's coming. We're going to give you the ability to kind of trade and toggle where those are for your division. And then a longer term goal, and this is where Chien is going to be really chiming in as a researcher, is we're going to try to do analysis to not only give you the ability to set those cut points, but try to give you information and kind of research and analysis specific to your division and your students that says, hey, here's where we would suggest you put your cut scores and why. And then have a meeting with your divisional level folks every single year, kind of priming you and kind of giving you the latest and greatest analytical interpretation of your data and saying, here's how your division currently stands and how we would best suggest you set your cut points to get the most out of the EWS system. Will you be able to create reports or pull specific data down that you want to use? Yes, you'll definitely be able to pull data down that you want to use. I can actually show you that in a minute here. In terms of the create reports, depends a little bit on what you mean there. If you're thinking like kind of having an ad hoc report generator type of thing, that is in our backlog, and it's being discussed whether we want to go more the route of having a few, and not necessarily a few, but having a set of fixed reports that people can download, that those are the most commonly asked ones. That's relatively easy to build out. Or do we want to try to go in the direction of building out a dynamic build your own report kind of thing that you would then be able to download, which is a little bit more development heavy. And so we're trying to think through what's the right approach there and just haven't reached a decision yet. Either way, that will be an enhancement. I can tell you that. Can cut scores be set at the school level? Again, that's something that we are discussing and something we're actually going to be looking for feedback from our regional steering committee on is it divisional level? Is it grade band, or is it school? We wouldn't go any more granular than school, but our thought is for those divisions that are really, really large, that have, 100 schools, that's really time consuming to go through and set all your cut points for all your courses for all your schools. That may not be something that they want to hear. That could be really daunting. Whereas Orange, since I've been working with them a little bit more, I know they only have like 10 schools. That'd still be a lot of things to configure, but it's a reasonable amount to configure. And so that's something that we are exploring and are going to be looking for feedback on. Your division. All right, I saw at least a few questions come in. Will this be tied to the new SBAR information? And I saw that Xian is talking about that. It is a discussion we've been having, and kind of where we are leaning towards is that, yes, it is all the behavioral information is going to be tied to the new SBAR standards and codes and things like that. So that way, yes, it will be a little bit of a struggle getting started, but the long term is that your reporting, your internal systems, and this system are all going to align to that new standard to make sure that we are embracing and understanding that new way of coding behavioral information. And so, yeah, it is both going to kind of facilitate and force that change a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start looking at the comments now. So going back to Ashley's question, since she was the first one to ask it. Will it work with PM assessments, like take any assessment in PM, but get the analytics from Learn? By Learn, I'm assuming you mean LASER, totally fine. But if I'm off on that and you actually do mean the Learn system, I don't know what that is, so I can't answer that question, but that's also totally fine. And we can talk about that more. But assuming you're talking about linking it to LASER, in some ways, my answer is like, we'll see. In other ways, my answer is yes. And so in terms of, we're absolutely going to be pulling in that data from the Power School assessments generator and using that. It's just a matter of when does that get into the system? We're linking into Power School right now and seeing kind of what data is available to us with zero customization, but we're going to get that assessment data. It just might be that's in the first round of enhancements rather than something that's available right out of the gate. Well, like I said, what's available right out of the gate for LASER is not the final product. We have already a very extensive backlog of what we're planning on building out and adding to this system, and having the details of the assessment generator and kind of the ability to look at those subcategories of that are tagged to all those items. That is absolutely something that is in scope. It's just a matter of getting there. All right. How often will districts be able to upload data to the system? And that's from Thomas. And then I also see from Thomas too below there, how are you linking? Are you using an API? And so I'm just going to kind of answer those together. Yes, we are using an API. And so all of the SIS that we are at least aware of right now across the state already have APIs which are EDFI compliant. And that's EDFI is the data standard that's kind of underlying all of LASER. So that way we can easily scale across all divisions that are interested in this. And so because of that, because we are using an API, and I kind of mentioned having data as up to date in LASER as it is in your systems, I'm not talking like minute by minute refreshes or anything like that, but probably daily refreshes is what we're targeting. If there's a need for data to be updated more frequently than that in certain areas, we can absolutely talk about that. I just don't know that I necessarily see the use case for that. And so to I kind of balance the technology stress on the system, we're thinking daily updates where it'll refresh overnight, kind of things like that. And so because of that, there isn't really necessarily an upload into the system. There may be future data sets or enhancements or things like that, which would require more manual uploads. And as those are identified and worked on through our backlog, we'll figure out what that cadence is. But we actually have other software and tools that we have started working with in addition to the API route. So if for some reason you do have a particular data set that is important to LASER, but you don't store that in your SIS, that's fine. We're not going to be forcing you to suddenly store it in the SIS. We have other tools which will be able to grab that information from a designated spot on, again, we can kind of set the frequency at which it is pulling that data into the LASER system. So we're trying to reduce any additional work or manual uploading or anything like that to the greatest extent as possible, and instead having LASER go and fetch the data for you and pull it into the system itself. All right, what SIS are you ready to work with now? We are an Infinite Campus client. So like I mentioned before, we are working, sorry, this is from Charles. We are working with Orange County. They're kind of our pilot division. They are a power school SIS. And so that is the division, sorry, the system that we are working with initially, but we're scaling this out to all divisions. And we are not going to say, like, if you want this, you have to be power school. That is not what we are saying. We are going to get those APIs that work with Infinite Campus or Schoology or Canvas, Synergy, that was the other one I was missing, and use those APIs, link to your systems as they are, and then bring you into the system. The only thing I will say, and inevitably there's going to be a question about timeline on this, and it's a fantastic question, I can talk more about that later, is because we are currently partnering with a division that is using PowerSchool divisions, other PowerSchool divisions are going to be able to be onboarded a little bit earlier, a little bit more quickly than some of those SISs that are other than PowerSchool, those divisions that are using other SISs. But it's our goal to bring everybody on board as quickly as we possibly can, regardless of SIS. Patrick said, will linking our SIS, PowerSchool, with level data state reporting plugin cause state reports to be automatically delivered to DOE? That is a great question. Right now, no, but that is not off the table. And so kind of like I've said before, right now we are building LASER to be a decision analytics platform, not a reporting platform. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't go in that way. And so we're going to have this backlog that we're going to be curating from our own ideas, from within DOE and other divisions and things like that, but also from all of you in terms of what is the most important features or functionalities that be built in. And so if we're hearing time and time again, like, hey, this is great, I love that you're linked to our SIS, we're using LASER, but what would be really great is if we no longer have to do the SRC and you just pull the data yourself. Like that would really make my day. Like if that's what we're hearing, we're absolutely going to explore that. But if we're hearing that from like one division and everybody else is like, we have our macros built, it's not the end of the world, it's totally fine, then that would be lower down on the backlog list then. Like it's really going to be driven by what are we hearing as being those biggest impact items from everybody. That's where we're going to devote our time and our build out. All right, good question, Patrick. All right, please explain the purpose of Performance Matters implementation if this is virtually going to replace it. So that's from Rena. So I will touch on that. I'm not entirely positive exactly what you're driving at. So if I don't address it again, please just clarify. So Performance Matters implementation, like why I brought that up previously was more to provide context as to why DOE has identified LASER as something we want to build, is because Performance Matters implementation didn't go particularly great for a lot of divisions. And I'm trying to be perfectly honest, like some divisions I know use it, love it, went perfectly smoothly exactly how they wanted. And that's fantastic. I'm really, really excited for you to be using that product if it's the right fit for you. But it's not the right fit for everyone, either because of the implementation or because it's just not the right product for you and kind of where your division is and how you envision serving your students. And that's perfectly fine as well. And that's what we're hoping LASER is going to be the right solution for all of you. And so going forward, I actually had a question in a different session is like, is there anything that would prevent us from using Performance Matters and LASER? No, that's totally fine. Like if you want to run them in parallel and kind of for a year after you're able to be implemented and like, we want to run them in parallel for a year and then we'll figure out which one we like and make a decision then, that's totally fine. We have zero issue with that. There's nothing compulsory about using LASER. It is just a product that is going to be available to you. And so that Performance Matters implementation and LASER virtually going to replace it, That's the way that we view it, but there may be a reason or an aspect that you want to continue using both or anything. Like I hope, again, Rita, I hope that answers your question, but feel free to follow up. To clarify, are we utilizing existing APIs established between EdFi and vendors, presumably to a local EdFi ODS? Can you share which APIs are being leveraged? And that's from Kara. And so, yes, we are using existing APIs. And so EdFi has a list of all of the SSIS vendors that already have EdFi certified APIs. So I know PowerSchool, Synergy, Schoology, Canvas, it's a pretty long list. Those are the ones that immediately jump to mind, are all certified by EdFi as being compliant APIs. There are others that are in their certification process that we could potentially leverage. And so that is the direction we're going with those SSIS APIs. And I keep talking about the SSIS because that's where we're targeting initially. That doesn't mean that's where we're going to, again, stop. Like we can link to other systems using other tools. Or we've also heard from divisions like, well, we use Mastery Connect or Canvas. Like that's where we actually store a lot of our data, is more on the LMS side rather than the SSIS side. Okay, that's fine. We're starting with SSISs. It's like we have a pretty ambitious end vision for this. It's going to take us a long time to fully flesh that out. But linking to those LMSs and doing analytics with that data, that is in our scope. It's just that's not where we are starting. And so, yeah, we definitely are planning on kind of grabbing all of the data that we can that would be of use to divisions. And so again, if like divisions are saying, hey, we really want you to reach into our financial systems and visualize that for us, we can put that into the backlog. But if divisions are saying, don't you dare touch that data, you don't get to see that, that's totally fine too. Like we're not fishing for data. We're just trying to be of assistance to all of you. All right, will assessments be created and delivered to students via LASER? From Rita. It's a good question. I got that in a different one as well. Short answer is no. We are not looking to replace the assessment generator in the PowerSchool suite of products. That could potentially be one of those things that we're hearing time and time again from divisions, but that is a really, really big, ambitious thing to try to replace. That would not be an offering that would come anytime soon. That is not in the realm of our current scope. Like that is not something we anticipate replacing. That is a very, very big endeavor. But at the same time, again, that's not me saying it couldn't be something in the future. It's just not currently within scope. And kind of letting divisions continue to leverage whatever products in that assessment generation space that they are already using and comfortable. Can I clarify again what I said at the beginning about what pieces of performance analytics will not be supported going forward? Right. And so again, when I'm saying will or will not be supported, I am saying from a DDOE fiscal perspective. So currently that baseball scorecard or performance matters analytics component, the baseball scorecard, EWS, early warning system, that component is paid for by DOE. That is going to cease to be the case. That product will continue to exist, and every division would have the option to add that to their contract in terms of what they want to procure and receive from PowerSchool. And that's entirely your prerogative. It's just that DOE will no longer be fiscally supporting those products. All right. So Sarah asked, will this be ready for use at the beginning of the 21-22 school year? That is a great question. The broad strokes answer is no. That's not entirely accurate. And so what I mean by that is Orange County, we've hit some delays in some of our getting environments made for us by VITA and Access. So like we are a little bit behind some aspects of our development timeline, other aspects were ahead. So it's a bit of a mixed bag there. But Orange County is going to be brought on board before the end of the school year for the EWS system. We plan on having roughly 10 divisions up and running by the beginning of the 21-22 school year. By the end of the 21-22 school year, we are targeting having 50 to 60 divisions brought on board. And by the beginning of the 22-23 school year, we plan on having LASER be available to any division who wants it. And so that's kind of the timeline that we're operating on. And that timeline is the SSIS integrated timeline. If you're talking about the general accreditation tracker, that basic accreditation tracker that's going to be made available to everyone, that we are targeting being available and rolled out sometime next spring, probably around the March SRC collection, maybe a little before, maybe a little after, but that's the timeline that we're anticipating that being made available for everyone. Great question. So when do we anticipate non-PowerSchool users' first availability? That's a great question, Thomas. And to be perfectly honest, I don't have a great answer for you. And the reason I don't is because we are engaging right now with the other SIS vendors. And so we're trying to figure out, like, what does it take? How do we hook up with their APIs and things like that? And so it's just in kind of the early stages, but I will say it's not like we're saying everybody PowerSchool gets to come on, then everybody Synergy, then everybody, like, it's not going to be staggered like that. Like, I would say at some point, possibly even this summer, definitely by sometime in the fall, some of those non-PowerSchool divisions are going to be coming on board. I just can't give you a firm timeline on that quite yet. But yeah, it's not like we're kicking you down the road super far. It would just be, I'm going to say a little bit of a delay. Chances are there won't be even any noticeable delay, and it's just going to be a matter of, sorry, we can only bring on 5 divisions simultaneously at a time or something like that. And there's the backlog. And so, sorry, you're here in the pecking order, or just kind of like random selection kind of a thing. And so that I think is almost potentially the larger delay for non-PowerSchool divisions. But that's also going to be the case for PowerSchool divisions. Is just there has been a good amount of interest in the system, which is really exciting. But that also means that we can only bring on so many divisions so quickly at a time. How will early adoption divisions be identified from India? Right, so we've kind of already mentioned Orange is who our pilot is with. Some of those divisions that we've identified as being some of that first 10 that are available for this upcoming school year, they are those divisions that are interested in having it from our regional steering committee, kind of as a thank you for, giving us your time and spending, hours providing us feedback and directionality on this. Kind of our thank you to them is allowing them to be earlier adopters of the system. After that, I will be perfectly honest, we don't know quite yet how the identification and prioritization of divisions onboarding is going to go quite yet. That's something that we are actively working on, is figuring out that. And I will actually tell you that in the next, I'm going to say 3 weeks to be a little conservative, but call it, somewhere around that time, we are going to be sending out a lot of information about LASER to all of the divisions, all of you. And so some of that information will be a recap of this. Some of that information will be like an FAQ. And one of the things that's going to be in there is kind of an interest form of saying, like, what's your name, your division, your SIS, so that way we can get that information as well. And then like, what is your interest level? It's like, we want this thing and we want it as soon as possible, or like, we're interested, but no particular rush. Like, we have a system that works. It's okay. Other divisions can go first, but we want it. Or, we have our own thing, no interest. It was cool getting information, but maybe we'll talk to you in a few years if we decide we're unhappy, but we're totally fine. And like different levels in between. And so that's also going to inform some of how we set when different divisions are being onboarded. You're providing LASER. Is VDOE paying any vendor API fees? From Thomas. And so, yeah, we are, charting that path forward right now by talking with those vendors. But the intent is that LASER is 100% free to all divisions. Like, we'll do whatever it takes to integrate with your systems, kind of where you are. We might make recommendations like, hey, you might want to consider doing this, but like, it'll be up to you whether or not you take our recommendations. But in terms of cost, it should be absolutely free. There is no intent that you will have to pay for LASER at any point. It'll all be DOE hosted costs. All right, who will be receiving the interest letter questionnaire by job description from Patty? So that will it's going to go out in several different ways, because we've realized we've actually sent out like a few different superintendents emails and like notifications about this throughout the fall and winter. And it became recently apparent that that information was not really reaching a lot of people. And so that's kind of where we had this most recent blast advertising these, that we kind of pulled tons of different things that sounded kind of relevant from SSWS and our contact list, and we blasted it out and kind of said, hey, please pass this around as best as you can. So we are going to be leveraging a DDOT distribution list with our assessment team at DOE. We are going to be leveraging a tech directors distribution list that my team works with. We are going to be working with the Tuesday Tech letter. I forget exactly what it's called. Tuesday Digest. I don't know, Sheehan could jump in.
Tuesday Telegram contact.
Yes, Tuesday Telegram. Yes, that's what it is. And so that's from the VDOE data team. That's going to be sending out the information as well. And then we're going to kind of send out in that mass email list that we've already used the information as well. And likely have like either a superintendent's memo or email. Like we are going to be trying to push that information across as many different avenues as possible. I see from Kristen, can DDOT and DDOT2s be included in information? And so, yeah, one of those, like I mentioned with Sarah Sussbaner and the assessment team, they're going to be sending it to, they mentioned the DDOT list. I would assume DDOT2s as well. I'm not as familiar with that list by name, but I would assume like if you're in communication with that team, they're going to make sure that you get this information as well. Performance Matters Division contacts. We can try to do that. I'll be perfectly honest. When like just trying to think back, I don't remember that actually being a contact list that was available to us to pull from SSWS. So if it is an option, we'll definitely send it to that group, Rena, but I just don't know if that's like a contact list that we have easy access to, but we'll do our best. We're really trying to get this out to everybody who we think may be interested or relevant to the information contained within. All right, could I explain again what constitutes coursework in your ABC dashboard? Data analytics is only as good as the data used. That so true. Best like data. Yep, garbage in, garbage out, that good data mantra. So coursework is going to be a mix of a few things. So one of that is going to be your school or division leveled summative benchmarks and end of term grades will inform that data. And then another component of it is going to kind of be those third party standardized tests, whether that's access for EL, MAP, PALS, SOLs, that kind of data will be informing your overall rating as well in coursework. And so it is going to be a blend there. We aren't looking to pull in like every single piece of homework or things like that. That's a bit much where it's kind of at that point data overload and it's not necessarily useful. And so we're really focusing more on those summative benchmark type components to be informing the dashboards. And again, we're pulling division data. So whether it's your coursework data or it's your attendance data, if all your attendance codes are wrong for half of your students, the dashboard's going to be a mess. But again, like we're limited by that data that we are getting from division. So it is going to be a shared responsibility in terms of data quality from the divisions, and then visualizing the data in a useful and compelling and responsible way from the DOE to make sure we are giving you useful, meaningful analytics and outcomes to respond to. And so Brian here, curious how this sample screen aligns or doesn't with a shift away from approaching students with a deficit mindset. When I see this as emphasizing what a student cannot do or is not yet doing rather than showing information on what they can or are doing. That's a fantastic comment, Brian. That is so incredibly powerful there and like really good mindset. And those are some of the comments and feedbacks. You know, obviously there are some of the usability or like, I'd like to see this visualization. And I think that's where a lot of people's minds most immediately jump when they're looking at these things. But that sort of mindset type of stuff is really, really important. And we do want to hear that feedback. And so we've already done some language shifts away from deficit mindset. And so we want to continue on that journey, and we do want this tool to help with that. And so some of the things that I can tell you we are doing is like, one of the things we've been talking a lot about is having intervention logging within the system. And so you can actually see something down here at the bottom of the screen, highest risk students. And so it'll kind of tell you those students that do have various needs in different areas, and whether or not there are improvement plans in place for those students. Well, we plan on taking that another step to having a collaborative space where different people who are working with that student, principal, school counselor, teacher, would be able to have a shared space where they can put their notes around what are they doing in terms of interventions to work with that student? What are they having success with? What have they tried but didn't have as much success with? So that way, collectively, those educators can try to figure out what is the most effective and best route forward for each individual student. One of the other things that we've talked about doing is this particular screen doesn't have it right now, but having little like information bubbles. Sometimes they will be definitional for certain things, but we have definitions and resources up here, and we're going to have like little hover text in various areas where you may get little hints or blurbs around, hey, if your student is having trouble with attendance and it's this kind of an attendance issue, here are a few different ideas of things that you could try. And those are going to be sourced from kind of general best practices that we're hearing kind of from a community standpoint, as well as based on research that our team will be doing and kind of adding into the system. And so it's that vision is definitely intended to be a space where it does identify where students may need, again, either kind of corrective or stretch opportunities presented to them, but not just identify, but also provide suggestions or ideas around what you could potentially try. And so that is where we are trying to go with this, and we'll absolutely welcome kind of thoughts and perspectives on how to make that better through the system. Sorry, got me excited there, Brian. I probably spoke on that longer than I really should have, but it is something that I do really care about, the system doing well. All right, will economically disadvantaged status be available at the student level? And that's from Patty Fox. This is actually something that we've been discussing. Our regional working group actually flagged it for us, that they're like, whoa, hey, as a heads up, divisional level staff and school administrators are allowed to know that information, but teachers aren't allowed to know that information. And that's one of those things where we're trying to get an understanding from divisions around what are those data sharing practices of what is and is not allowed, and try to make some decisions that are, we can apply kind of blanket for everybody, but understand like what are those concerns. And then because we have different views, like, yes, there's a student details view, but the information that a division person sees in student details view versus the information that a teacher sees in student details view doesn't have to be the same. And so we may remove the economically disadvantaged status from the student details page, or the ability to sort by that student group for all of our teacher views, but leave that in there for those divisional views. So that way, that might be something that's important for divisional leaders to be able to understand and take a look at. Are divisions able to customize which filters are available to which groups? Division, school, teachers. All right, just talked about that a little bit. That is probably not something that we are going to leave up to the divisions, Colleen. That's probably something that we want that information and feedback, but probably a decision that we're going to try to make system-wide just to keep it a little bit more uniform for the sake of compatibility, comparability, and kind of training on the system. There are other things which we are going to let divisions have the ability to customize, like what are the cut points between on-track, early warning, and needs intervention. That is, it's not going to be available out of the gate, but that's one of our first identified enhancements, is that needs to be something that divisions do have the ability to set on their own. And so there are things which we are going to allow divisions to customize and configure to their wants and needs, but there are other things which we are trying to keep more consistent across the entire system. And we understand that that's going to be a balancing act, and not every division is going to get the answer they want in every case, but it is something we are thinking about. All right, is there going to be an option to export these tables, i.e. student details? Oh, sorry, I've clicked in the wrong spot. Yeah, so let me real quickly again, like if I just highlight these to show you real quickly, I can view data, and there's actually export all right here. And so yes, there absolutely is going to be the ability to export those data into an Excel spreadsheet. That way you can do pivot tables or things like that. But at the same time, The fact that you're doing that is something we're going to want to hear. Can't promise on implementation timeline, but if there are certain views or slices or functionalities, views and ways that you're trying to consistently look at and understand your students, we want to hear about that. We can build out new views for you and new functionalities. Of course, there are always going to be like those weird one-off, I need to look at this one thing from my superintendent today that I don't know if I'll ever look at again. Yeah, we want you to have the ability to go do that analysis yourself, and we probably won't build that in to the system. But those views and queries that you are answering more consistently, we do want to hear that. So that way we can either build in the functionality to let you do more ad hoc things like a pivot table, but on demand, or if it's just a view you're consistently looking at, build in that report by default. Since it is 1 o'clock, as this rolls out, what is your plan for PD? What will the structure of your technical help system? That's a great question, S. Mitchell. So again, something we're talking about right now. I can tell you what the long-term vision is. Short-term, it's going to be a little bit of like growing pains because we need to hear what is most relevant and most important to all of you. So long-term vision, what I can tell you is there's going to be some there's going to be an email box that you're able to email. And DOE, my team, is going to have 1 to 2 dedicated staff to support LASER and interacting with all of you, answering your questions, helping with views, doing some like, I'm going to call it like user research of like, okay, I saw that you said you use this view a lot. Let's talk about it and figure out exactly what you're talking about. So that way we can gather some requirements and then we can start building that report out for you. So there's going to be an email. There may be a chat feature. We plan on putting a lot of stuff like FAQ documents, user and technical guides in that definitions and resources tab that you can see at the top there. I also hope to embed and kind of deploy some relatively high level, but user videos that will orient people to the system when they're first getting involved in it. And as divisions are being onboarded with some of your power users, or even if you want us to do like, hey, we're bringing on and we happen to have like a PD day at this point, can you come do a 1-hour webinar for all of our teachers? Absolutely, reach out to us. We'll set up some screen shares, we'll set up some webinars, and we'll do kind of that tailored onboarding for specific groups or for your division or schools. And yeah, so it's going to be fairly comprehensive is kind of that end goal. But some of that's also, if we're missing aspects of like, this would be really great, let us know. Like we want to build that in. Something we've been batting around was a chat feature. And to be perfectly honest with you, I keep going back and forth on whether or not I actually think that'd be useful or usable. And so if that's something that you're like, nope, totally want that, let us know. Whereas if it's like, an email's fine, or I can call this number if it's more urgent, like that's great. That's really easy to do. And so again, a lot of that ideation needs to be a shared partnership in terms of what is most useful for all of you. See some Julie there. She loves the chat feature idea. Okay, we'll explore that. Julie also asked, when will VDOE stop paying for analytics and PM? So the official support statewide for that ends at the this school year. So in, I want to say June 30th, it could be July 31st, but it ends over this summer is when the official support for that ends. However, because we know we cannot bring every division on who wants LASER in time for the next school year, there are going to be assistant grants available through DOE to help any division who needs Performance Matters analytics over the course of the upcoming school year because they aren't able to be brought on to LASER yet. We will be offering 1-year grants that are going to vary in size based on the size of your division and therefore the cost of Performance Matters for your division. And so there more information about that will be coming out, but there will be some continued assistance from DOE. All right, will security allow for restricting of which users can extract data? That's a great question, Thomas. That's not something we had actually, or at least I didn't have on my list. I was assuming that that would be something we would leave open to all roles. But if it is something where we only kind of want division or school level administrators to be able to kind of do that data export, and teachers are only like restricted to whatever is available in the system and not able to export data, I want to say that's possible through Tableau. I'm like 95% sure that is possible. it's an interesting idea. That's one of those things where it's like, we'd want to get a larger perspective than just answering or like implementing a feature based on a single division's feedback, but absolutely something we could explore and should explore, honestly. And so that's, yeah, concerns about detailed information getting out. I mean, that's legitimate, but at the same time, I think there's a certain level of inherent trust that is necessary with this tool. So one thing I will say is access to the tool, the whole tool, like whether or not person A has access to LASER, that is something that is decided at the divisional level. And so like, you know, you can say like, I understand what this person's role is and they have no need to have access to LASER, therefore I'm not creating them an account. That is 100% possible. But we are assuming a certain amount of, if you're saying they have access to LASER, chances are they already have a lot of access to information about the students that they're able to see. And so, you know, what's really the difference between them having access to the grade book and the SSIS, where they could pull that information for all the students they already have. And if they really wanted to, they could already give that information to the newspaper versus them also having that information in LASER. And so absolutely a concern that we should be talking about. And I'd love to hear more from you exactly what you're thinking about there. But I think end of the day, there's inherent to just any sort of data system, there is a certain amount of, because we are granting you access to this system, we are also trusting you to use the data within it responsibly. And if you don't trust somebody to do that, you just shouldn't be granting them access to anything in the first place. But I also hear you that there are shades of that where it's kind of like, I'm fine with them having access within the system. I just don't want them to be able to export it. And so definitely willing to explore that more with you. Useful for all of you. All right, we are at 1 o'clock. And so I apologize that we didn't have more time for questions here at the end, but I really do hope that this was helpful for all of you. We're looking forward to giving you more information. We're really looking forward to hearing back from you about whether or not, you know, you're excited about this, you want to be a part of it, whether or not you feel like we're on the right track or off base on this. So please, open lines of communication are always welcome, and feel free to, you know, bubble that up to your regional representative on the steering committee, or you can reach out directly to us. But really appreciate everybody's time today. I can stick around for about 5 more minutes answering any questions that you may have. But otherwise, I do really appreciate everybody taking, you know, their lunch hour to come listen to me talk way too much. And so thank you all.